Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Tuesday, the 7th of January here in London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, Mark Carney says he's considering running to succeed Justin Trudeau as Canada's Prime Minister.
UK political parties come together to urge Trump to reconsider his relationship with Elon Musk.
Plus, Olaf Scholz's bid to reinvent Germany as a chip superpower flounders after a big setback from Intel. We have a special report.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada, says he's considering entering the race to replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's Prime Minister. Carney, the current chair of Bloomberg's board of directors, said he's encouraged by support from Liberal lawmakers and backers. Trudeau resigned as Prime Minister after more than 9 years in office. He cited his inability to unite his Liberal Party while facing declining poll ratings and rebellion from within the party.
I have always been driven by my love for Canada, by my desire to serve Canadians, and by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And Canadians deserve a real choice in the next election. And it has become obvious to me with the internal battles that I cannot be the one to carry the Liberal standard into the next election.
Trudeau will remain as Prime Minister until a new leader is selected. It will likely be in March. His decision to step down comes amid mounting discontent over high inflation, weak economic growth and a perceived mismanagement of immigration. Canada's Conservative Party has built a 20-point lead in polls ahead of an election due by October.
NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang has announced a range of new chips, software and services as the company looks to maintain its lead in artificial intelligence. Interest in NVIDIA's products has exploded as companies rush to use more AI computing gear. Huang spoke to a packed arena at the opening of the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
And so when you see application after applications that are AI-driven, AI-native, at the core of it, this fundamental concept is there. Machine learning has changed how every application is going to be built, how computing will be done, and the possibilities beyond.
And you can catch our interview with NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang in a special edition of Bloomberg Technology tomorrow. That's at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time or 4:30 p.m. here in London.
The US has blacklisted Tencent and Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited, known as CATL, for alleged links to the Chinese military. Bloomberg's China correspondent Min Lo says the move puts a target on both China's top electric vehicle battery maker and its most valuable company.
It is the heaviest weighted stock in the MSCI, 16% of that index. So any outsized move there will really weigh down on the broader index. And of course, question is whether Tencent can recover from this, because in the past, there has been companies like Xiaomi, for instance. Hesai is another one that has managed to get themselves off that blacklist. So that is still a possibility as well.
Min Lo adds that both companies say their addition to the blacklist is a mistake. The surprise move comes ahead of Trump's presidency, which is expected to bring an array of new tariffs. The president-elect posted on Truth Social yesterday to deny a report that he might moderate any plans for across-the-board tariffs.
Facebook's parent company Meta has named 3 new directors to its board. The list includes UFC CEO and staunch Trump supporter Dana White, who introduced the president-elect at this summer's Republican National Convention. Meta founder Mark Zuckerberg has been working to improve his firm's relationship with Donald Trump, including dining with him at Mar-a-Lago estate in November. With more on the other appointments, here's Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Along with White, the social media company named Charlie Songhurst, an investor and former Microsoft executive who already advises Meta on artificial intelligence products, and John Elkann, the CEO of Exchequer, which is a holding company controlled by the Agnelli family that has stakes in European businesses, including Ferrari. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
Senior politicians in 3 of the UK's major parties have urged Donald Trump's allies to reconsider his relationship with Elon Musk. The tech billionaire endorsed far-right activist Tommy Robinson and called for Prime Minister Keir Starmer to be imprisoned in a series of posts online. Starmer says a line has been crossed.
those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible. They're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves. Those who are cheerleading Tommy Robinson, they're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming case.
As well as Starmer's public rebuke, Bloomberg has learned figures at the top of the Labour government, the Conservative opposition and the Reform UK party have all privately warned Trump's circle that Musk is damaging the incoming president's reputation in Britain. The complaint is a rare show of unity in the UK when it comes to US politics and Trump, representing a combined 72% of the vote.
The UK's long-term borrowing costs have come close to their highest level in more than a quarter of a century. That's ramping up pressure on Chancellor Rachel Reeves to keep the market on side ahead of a raft of bond sales this week. Bloomberg's James Wilcock has more.
When the UK's Debt Management Office comes to market this morning, it will be the first time since the days of Gordon Brown when 30-year gilts are being issued with an average yield above 5%. That's an eye-watering level for Britain, one not seen since the 1990s, bar a sudden spike in the Truss era. It's also threatening the government's fiscal rules. The higher cost of debt, caused in part by Rachel Reeves' budget, and the interest rate environment could force the Chancellor to break her promise and be forced to raise more taxes. In London, James Woolcock, Bloomberg Radio.
And UK gilt yields closed yesterday at 5.18%. Now, the world's biggest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates, has dismissed 7% of its workforce. In a letter to investors, Bridgewater said the decision to cut around 90 jobs had been made to maintain a dynamic ecosystem of ideas and innovation. Founded by Ray Dalio, Bridgewater posted double-digit returns for most of its strategies last year, with about $160 billion under management as of July.
And those are some of our top stories for you this morning. In terms of the markets this hour, so the US dollar yesterday was weakened by nearly a full percentage point after a Washington Post article claiming the limited scope of Donald Trump's tariffs. This morning, the dollar is down another 0.1%. We mentioned in the top stories that that article was later denied by Donald Trump. The US dollar recovered somewhat. It ended the session, though, weakened 0.6% yesterday. And again, we're down this morning. So that on the dollar. In terms of stock futures this morning, they are looking softer for the US. Certainly for the Nasdaq futures, they're down almost 0.2%, shrugging off a keynote speech from the Nvidia boss Jensen Huang overnight at CES in Las Vegas. The Hang Seng is down this morning 1.9% and Tencent slumping at 7.4% this morning. This as the Japanese yen is weaker and European stock futures are down 0.4%.
In a moment, we'll bring you more on the Canadian politics, plus tell you why German dreams of becoming a semiconductor superpower are now fading. But another story that caught our eye this morning about, Caroline, we have a thing about tracking watch prices yes. on this programme. Some people are very interested in the prices of the top watch brands.
I'm just wondering whether you've got a bonus maybe that's burning a hole in your pocket that you haven't told me about.
I haven't worn a watch since 2006.
Oh, I love mine. Look, we do always like to track it. Bloomberg Subdial Watch Index. Of course, the news is that the most sought after used watches like Rolex and Patek Philippe and so on, they fell again in 2024.
Yeah, indeed. And looking at, the lowest level in 3 years for many of the popular models as well. So, Rolex models down about 5% during the year. Patek Philippe prices down about 4% as well. This is all based on the Subdial watch trading platform that tracks the price for these second-hand watches as well. So, over 2 years, you're talking about the Bloomberg Subdial Index being down about 13%.
A significant drop. I suppose there was a big bump also post-pandemic. During the pandemic, I suppose, and lockdowns of people looking for those timepieces. Anyway, nice story on the Bloomberg terminal.
Let's bring you more now in our top story this morning. Mark Carney says he's considering running to succeed Justin Trudeau, who is resigning as Canada's Prime Minister after more than a year of weak polling numbers. Other potential candidates include Chrystia Freeland and Dominique LeBlanc, who replaced her as Finance Minister. Joining us now to discuss is Bloomberg's Executive Editor for Canada, Derek DeCluet, who's in Toronto for us. Derek, thanks for joining us. Who then has the best chance of succeeding Justin Trudeau?
It's a bit early to say, and it's hard to know, but the biggest names in this race would seem to be Mark Carney, as you mentioned, and Chrystia Freeland, who is the former finance minister and the former deputy prime minister who really set today's events in motion just before Christmas when she resigned and published this scathing resignation letter that essentially accused Trudeau of not taking Donald Trump's trade threats seriously enough. And that is something from which Trudeau could not recover. So those are the biggest names, but there are other members of Trudeau's cabinet who will be taken seriously in the Liberal leadership contest. One of them is the foreign minister, Melanie Joly. She's been involved in, lots of hot files like the Ukraine, obviously, the Israel-Gaza conflict. Dominic LeBlanc is a very well-respected Liberal who's now the finance minister who replaced Chrystia Freeland, is thought to be interested. And then there are some even lesser-known candidates, such as Christy Clark, who's the ex-premier of British Columbia, but had a fairly successful run at that in charge of that province, and is said to be exploring this. So there will be a lot of interest because it's not a job that comes open very often.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, why did Trudeau resign in the end? I mean, the polling numbers have been bad for a long time. But what do you think sort of pushed him to that final decision?
Well, his party essentially forced him to. It's one thing when your polling numbers are bad and it's 2 years till the next election. It's another thing when the polling numbers are bad and it's only a few months till the next election. There are 153 Liberal members of Parliament, and dozens wanted him gone, and some of them were quite open about it. One member of Parliament said he would be delusional if he stayed. Others said it was totally not tenable for him to try to run another election. So essentially the political support that he had within his own party had just leached out from underneath him, and there was no way he could carry on.
This is happening, of course, when we are also watching events across the border in the United States and the inauguration of Donald Trump due in the next couple of weeks. I mean, what are likely to be the big issues in this leadership race, and is the threat of tariffs likely to be high among them?
I think it's probably the number one issue. I mean, it is hard to think of a current economic issue that is more pressing than that one. 25% tariffs, if the Trump administration were to carry that through, would be very harmful to the Canadian economy, and which about 75% roughly of Canadian exports go to the U.S. And there are a whole bunch of pretty important sectors for which there's not a lot of alternatives. The vast majority of the cars and trucks that Canada builds, go to the U.S. The vast majority of the oil and a lot of the natural resources, just the geographic proximity is such that Canada's become very reliant on this trade. So it's going to be the number one issue, I think, particularly as Trump seems so serious about carrying out with his tariff threats.
Yeah, indeed. And so what is going to happen next, you think, in terms of that leadership race? As you say, we're only months away from the deadline to hold a national election in Canada. So where do you think things are going to go now?
Well, I mean, the Liberal Party has to set out rules and a date and a process and for how they're going to choose the new leader. And then all these candidates I mentioned, they're going to have to make decisions really fast. Typically, when the Liberal Party is not in power and it wants to choose a new leader, it'll take like a year to do so. It's only got a couple of months to get the job done, and to have debates and for these candidates to set out a platform of why people should vote for them and sort of return to the Liberal brand. It's a big challenge. So they will have to have that leadership contest by probably the middle of March. And we could be into a national election as early as potentially April or May.
Okay, Derek, thanks so much for joining us. That's Derek DeClua there in Toronto, Bloomberg's executive editor for Canada.
Now, let's turn our attention to Germany. Olaf Scholz's aim to reinvent Germany as a chip superpower is foundering after a big setback from Intel. Now voters are expected to punish his failure to build firm foundations for economic growth in the country. It's the subject of a deep dive on the Bloomberg terminal today. And joining us now is Bloomberg's German Finance and Economy Ministry reporter, Camille Kovaci, who joins us now. Camille, great to have you on this story. Why did you pick this story to sort of highlight the issues of Olaf Scholz's government?
Yeah, well, hi guys. Firstly, good morning from Berlin. The starting point of the story is kind of the largest foreign investment ever made in Germany. It's worth 30 billion euros, right? So at least that's what everyone thought. It's the US company Intel announced to build one of its chip factories in eastern Germany. It's a structurally weak region that was under Soviet occupation for quite some time. And we decided for this story, it is because Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, he put a lot of political capital on this project. And also a lot of taxpayers' money, like worth 10 billion. And there was hardly a speech in which he didn't mention this investment in Germany. And rightly so. I mean, chips are essential for our digitalized world, right? They are built in everyday devices like washing machines, cars, smartphones, and are also essential for the future, like technologies, AI. But that and at some point the news broke and Intel announced that due to its economic problems, it would pause the construction of the factory in Germany. And almost everyone in the industry says that the company won't continue to build it, and that was the end of the Chancellor's dream to build a chip cluster in Eastern Germany.
So can the blame for this really be pinned on Olaf Scholz then, or is this just an economic decision being made by Intel?
Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, he miscalculated and he actually had to leave the company, as you may know. And the chip industry, like many others, is dependent on economic cycles, right? One time the demand is higher for chips, one time lower. But it's not only about that. There were like a few of red flags, right? That the industry knew about the problems that Intel had. They had fallen behind technologically compared to its competitors like TSMC. And secondly, it was also a very hard decision, or let's say seen by the German media very critically, that he was ready to pay 10 billion euros for just one US company. And in times of really tight budgets, I mean, they had to cut costs for social spending at some point, or they planned to, or at least that was within the negotiations. And then you pay like 10 billion for one company. So it was a very critical view of this.
Yeah, absolutely. But with the loss of this, what does it mean for Germany and for Europe? We know the difficulties that the German industry has been under. Are there alternatives? What are the next steps?
Yeah, it's definitely a major setback for Germany. It was also to create jobs and then to cushion the loss of former industries like coal mining. And you also have to think of the security issues. For example, think of the Corona crisis, which led to supply chain problems, and major car makers, very important for Germany's economy, like Volkswagen, BMW, and Audi. They have been unable to complete the cars because of the lack of chip supply. And think of Taiwan. You never know if when or if China will attack it. And there's the headquarters of TSMC, the biggest chip producer in the world. So it's not only an issue of growth. Germany is like not growing this second consecutive year in 2024. So it's also a security issue. And that's bad for Germany. It's bad for Europe.
What about the subsidies that were involved in this? 10 billion euros had been allocated for this Intel project. And I suppose, does it leave any alternatives for the German government in trying to find somebody else to make this sort of investment?
Yeah, they're trying, but with less money because they don't have it anymore. They actually used the 10 billion to plug budget holes. Actually, it was a practical. Intel withdrawing was good for Scholz in a way that he was able to plug some budget holes. But yeah, no, that's just short term and not long term perspective.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.